Hello and welcome to another episode of Google's SEO Office Hours. In these videos, we aim to answer your questions about SEO and Google search. These questions were submitted using the form link below over the past couple of months. To answer them, we have folks from Google's search quality team. We've been a bit slow with these recordings, sorry. Anyway, joining me today is Gary. So let's get started. A question from Faith. My rankings have dropped due to Google finding out I have 2 websites. Is this correct? No, that's not likely. Many people have several websites. Separate websites are not a problem. The issue is often more indirect. If you work on a lot of websites, you're not going to have a lot of time to make truly awesome websites everywhere. And if you're making websites that aren't awesome, then that can be something which our algorithms pick up on when it comes to recommending your site to others.
Hi, this is Gary from the Search Relations team. Javier is asking, does it really matter using underscore or hyphens to separate keywords in the URL? Well, keywords in URLs have barely any contribution to the rankings of your pages in Google's search results, but yeah, it does matter what you use as separators, and hyphens are better in some sense because it's clearer that they are separating words. I would really check our docs. We have tons of words about this.
Another question. On my site, I want Google to crawl and index pages, but not paginated search results. If I use follow noindex on my pagination pages, will Google not crawl through the results and index my pages? First of all, keep in mind that indexing is not guaranteed, even with a technically valid website. Before you look too deeply into this, make sure that your website is truly fantastic and worthwhile for the web's users. Going back to your question, theoretically, there are 2 outcomes here. Either Google is able to see the page and the links and follows them before dropping the page out of its index, or alternatively, the page is dropped out of the index and nothing from it is used. The outcome is not defined and will change over the site's lifetime. Practically speaking, if you're only linking to the detail pages from unstable pages like this, it's not guaranteed that Google or any other search engine will discover them. Maybe that's fine. And if you want more certainty, then make sure search engines don't have to guess. Andy asks, does it make sense to continue counting impressions and clicks from an old domain in reports after a relaunch on a new address? Hi, Andy. Ultimately, this is your decision and not something that affects SEO.
Javier is asking, I've got a t-shirt product with different colors in a dropdown. Each variant has to be shareable. Should I use #color or $color on the URL? Using hash, I make sure there's just one single indexable URL. If you can use fragments in the URL to change the content, that's probably a nifty way to deal with faceted results, but you can also just disallow crawling of URLs with certain parameters. This is, I think, covered in our documentation for e-commerce sites. In fact, check it out.
How do I remove my website from Google searches? Oh my, this is something I recently had a bit of practice with. So SEO is often about getting found, but not everyone wants that. When it comes to your website, there are few ways to prevent being found in search. Assuming you want your website to work for people, you could either use the robots.txt file or a noindex robots meta tag. I'll add links for the details. If you want to make sure that your site is not found at all, use the noindex robots meta tag. This is because with robots.txt, your website might still be findable if you search for it by name. Many content management systems, like Wix or WordPress, make it easy to choose a noindex. Additionally, if you urgently need to remove your website from search, there's a removal tool in Search Console which you can use. You need to verify ownership of your website for that first, and it's limited to a temporary removal. In short, try to use the noindex. Sean asks, when linking to a URL with the link to a highlighted text feature, does the PageRank flow to the page in the same way? So this refers to the browser functionality where you can select a piece of text on a page and ask for a link to that part of the page. Chrome calls this link to text fragment. The way that it's done is that the linked URL has a hash symbol followed by an identifier, something with the word text, and then something that uniquely identifies that part of the page. This is pretty cool and helpful if you want to link to a specific part of a long document. From a search point of view, any hash symbol and what follows there is ignored, so this has no special effect at all. It's just a normal link.
Robert is asking, web releases 503 server error and influence on web rankings. We would like to increase the speed of our web releases. The site will be down temporarily 503 status code 4 times a week for about 10-15 minutes. Is that a concern for SEO, either crawling or for ranking? Serving a 503 status code for an extended period of time will cause a decrease in crawl rate. This is documented extensively on Search Central. Fortunately for you, 10-15 minutes every now and then is not extended by any means, so you should be fine.
Palin asks, I changed the Facebook page URL to a new one. What do I need to do next? Hi, Palin. The ideal way to change the address shown in search results is to use a redirect. I don't know if Facebook pages can do this for you. You can check for a redirect roughly by just opening the old URL in a browser. If it redirects, it should move to the new URL. If you can't redirect, ideally, you'd remove the old page so that it no longer appears. In any case, without redirects, it usually takes a bit more time for search engines to understand that the new URL is more relevant to users. Eugene asks, after the site was transferred from WordPress to self-publishing, almost all publications disappeared from the index. The search results are 0. If your website dropped out of search results and is no longer being indexed at all, right about the time when you did a migration, then my guess is that your new website is somehow blocking search engines, or at least blocking Google. I'd start by analyzing the data in Search Console and working forward from there.
Someone's asking, my company is considering switching hosts for our website. Would switching have a negative and lasting effect on our SEO rankings? If you do things by the book, meaning the website keeps being resolvable and the actual downtime is minimal, changing hosts should not have negative effects on your page's rankings in Google search results.
Kostas asks, Google is indexing search URLs that were created by bots in Chinese. Will this affect SEO? Hi there. Well, bad news. Your website is probably hacked if you see pages like these in the search results. It sounds a lot like a common kind of hack that's called the Japanese keyword hack. You really need to resolve this if you want to use your website for users or for search. We have documentation on how to work on a variation of this hack in our documentation, which I'll link to. And, of course, don't be afraid to get help for something like this. It can be quite technical and complex to resolve.
Someone's asking, we have blocked some IPs from App Engine, and when submitting sitemaps, we get 403 general HTTP error. We publish our full range of IP addresses that we use for crawling, including crawling sitemaps. I don't know how you do the blocking, but I'd list those IPs. Check our docs for more info about Google's crawlers' IP ranges.
Cedric asks, how do I clear the historical search results on Google as it has cached the old information? Well, good news. We've started to remove the link to the cached version of a page in search, so at least there's that. However, the page might still be indexed and visible with a snippet. These are refreshed automatically over time, so they'll reflect the current status of your web page given time, and might disappear if your page has been removed completely from your website. For urgent situations, there's a removal tool which you can use. I'll link to it for you.
Reda is asking, I would like to know if I can use indexing API for real estate website as a real estate ad. I strongly recommend checking the docs for indexing API. As far as I remember, it's limited to just job postings and broadcast events and not for anything else. It might still work, but since it's intended for those two things, I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly it stopped working for unsupported verticals overnight.
Natalia asks, is it okay to integrate headlines in images as HTML text, for example, as H1? Well, there are various ways to integrate text into HTML elements and images. For the most part, they just work. The only variation I'd avoid is putting text into the image file, since this makes it hard for search engines and for some users to recognize.
Someone's asking, is there any sanction if a website got a hidden burger menu with the same links as the desktop menu? Duplicate link in DOM? Well, the answer is no.
Darren asks, can you still use multiple hreflang tags to indicate preferred locations if a domain is using a regional subdomain like me.domain for the Middle East? Yes, you can use multiple hreflang values for the same page. For example, you might have one German language page for both Germany and Austria. Keep in mind that this is specifically for hreflang, where we swap out the URLs shown to users in search results based on their language and location. Check out the internationalization documentation for more details. Ivan asks, should I create a new Search Console property when moving my website from HTTP to HTTPS? In short, yes. Or alternatively, verify at the domain level and you'll have both covered automatically.
Claudia is asking, false 404 URLs hitting my website from external source, could this be related to ranking drop? What can I do to fix it? Fake 404s that Googlebot might have crawled cannot be reasonably attributed to a ranking drop. It's normal to have any number of 404s on a site, and you don't have to fix them. Though, if you see in your analytics software that a larger number of actual users are also coming through those 404s, I would personally try to convert them somehow by, for example, showing them some relevant content instead.
Does the Google account used to verify a domain on Google Search Console have to match the owner of a new Google site? Search Console verification is so that you have access to the data and the settings that are relevant for your website. For Google, it doesn't matter who has verified ownership of the website. That said, from an organizational point of view, it seems like a bad practice to rely on employees' personal accounts to manage the company web presence. But again, for Search Console and Google Search, that doesn't matter. That's up to you.
Ranjit is asking, can sitemap file name can be anything other than sitemap.xml or sitemap_index.xml? Additionally, is it mandatory to have sitemap? You really don't have to have a sitemap, but if you choose to have one or more, you can name it anything you like. Mines are named Jommu_loves_cheese.xml, for example.
Prim asks, redirecting the mobile site URL to the common desktop URL instead of using a responsive or dynamic serving approach. Is this right? Well, taking a step back, the approach of using separate URLs for mobile and desktop versions is certainly an option, but you make things so much harder than they need to be, not just for SEO, but also for analytics, maintenance, and testing. I'd recommend that you move to a clean, responsive setup when you can. And that was it for this episode. I hope you found the questions and answers useful. If there's anything you submitted which didn't get covered here, I'd recommend posting in the Search Central help community. There are lots of passionate experts active there who can help you to narrow things down. And of course, if there's more on your mind, please submit those questions with the form link below. Your questions here are useful to us and to those who catch up on these recordings, so please keep them coming. If you have general feedback about these episodes, let us know in the comments or ping us on social media. In the meantime, may your site's traffic go up and your crawl errors go down. Thank you, and see you soon. Bye!